Have you ever had one of those moments where someone says something, it's usually somebody on TV, and your brain just kind of stalls out? Not because it was obviously offensive, not because it was clearly wrong in some way, but because it landed sort of sideways. And like you say to yourself, did they just say what I think they said? And immediately your brain tries to clean it up. No, no, that's not what they meant. You're reading into it. They didn't actually say that. So you let it go. You move on, but later it's still there. That little itch in the back of your mind because part of you knows that you didn't imagine it. And if you bring it up, if you say, "Hey, that sounded kind of," the other side will shut you down instantly. What? They didn't say anything like that. Now you're not just confused. Now you're questioning your own reality. Did I mishear it? Did I overreact? Am I the problem? And that moment right there, that confusion, that self-doubt, that feeling like you caught something but you can't quite prove it, that's not an accident. That's the point. Greetings all, and welcome to Your Neighbor on the Left, podcast where we talk about progressive politics, human decency, and life on the blue side of America's ideological divide. My name is John Spielis, and I am your host. And today we're going to be talking about dog whistles. Not the ones you might use to train your pooch. No, I'm referring to the ones that allow someone to say something without actually saying it. And that kind is actually a lot more common than the actual whistles. So let's strip this down. A dog whistle is a communication that works on two levels at the same time. One meaning for everyone, and another meaning for a specific audience. Same sentence, two different messages. And the brilliance, if you want to call it that, is that the second message is never explicit. Because if it were explicit, then it could be challenged. So instead, it's implied, it's suggested, but it's understood. And the speaker always has an escape hatch. Always. I didn't say that. You're twisting my words. That's your interpretation. That right there is not a side effect. That is the design of the phrases. Now, let me say that again because this is the core of the whole thing. A dog whistle is language that says something out loud and something else underneath, while giving the speaker total cover to deny the second part. And this is the part that people miss. You're not crazy for hearing it. You're just picking up on the pattern, on the context, on the history, on how these phrases have been used before. That's not you overthinking. That's just recognition. Now, this isn't random. This is strategic because politics, when you break it right down, is about coalition building. If you want to fire up your base without alienating everyone else, you say something that sounds normal to most people, but lands very specifically with a certain group. Two audiences, same sentence. Different takeaways. And the people who aren't the target audience, they hear the surface meaning. So when someone calls it out, they go, "What are you talking about? That's not what they said." Now you've got confusion, disagreement, a debate over interpretation, instead of a debate over substance. And that's where this becomes powerful because we're not arguing about what was said. We're now arguing about what was meant. And meaning is slippery. It's deniable. Meaning is where this whole thing lives. And over time, your brain starts noticing patterns. Same phrases, same context, same targets. And suddenly, that confusion you used to feel starts to turn into clarity. Oh, so that's what that means. All right. So let's decode this. And I'm not going to dance around this. We're going to say the quiet part out loud for today because that's the only way this really works. Let's give some examples. Donald Trump in 2020 at a campaign rally. We must maintain law and order at the highest level, or we will cease to have a country. That's a direct quote. Now, that sounds reasonable, right? Of course it does. Nobody, or almost nobody, is anti-law, and even less people are pro-chaos. But here's the translation when this shows up in a specific context. Law and order has historically been used as a call to crack down on black communities and protest movements. That's not speculation. That is history. Civil rights era, same phrase. Protests against police brutality, same phrase. So what you're hearing is, we should enforce laws and keep people safe. But what it signals is we need to control those people causing disruption. And those people is often groups like black protesters or other marginalized groups. And again, they don't say that part out loud because they don't have to. Inner city. Inner city is another one. This is another quote from President Trump. Our inner cities are a disaster. You get shot walking to the store. Now, this one really isn't subtle. Inner city is not just a geographical reference. It's racial shorthand. Because when politicians say inner city, they are overwhelmingly referring to black communities. They're not talking about Wall Street crime. They're not talking about suburban opioid epidemics. They're not talking about, rural crime or rural poverty. Just one very specific image. What you hear is crime in cities is a problem. But what it signals for the base is black neighborhoods are dangerous. That's the image being painted. That's the association being reinforced. Another one is real Americans. Sarah Palin loved this one. These are real Americans, she would say. And this one is all about exclusion. Because if someone is a real American, then by default, that means someone else is not. And historically, that line has been drawn around race and religion and geography and culture. Small town, real. Urban, not so much. White, implied default. Everyone else, again, not so much. What you hear is hardworking, patriotic people. But what it signals is the right kind of Americans. And again, usually white, rural, conservative. Take back our country. Now, this is another favorite of President Trump. We are going to take our country back. From who? That's the key question. Because something can't be taken back unless it was lost. So who took it? Immigrants, minorities, liberals? The phrase lets the listener fill that in. What you hear is restore values and direction. What it signals, the country has been taken over by people who don't belong. Welfare queens. This is an older one, but this is a quote from President Reagan. There's a woman in Chicago. She has 80 names, 30 addresses. Now, I can't sugarcoat this one. The phrase was used to create a very specific image. A black single mother gaming the system, lazy, fraudulent, living off taxpayer money. That image was not accidental. It was politically useful because it tied race to government assistance. It created resentment and it justified cuts. So let's say it plainly. What you hear is someone is abusing welfare. But what it signals is black women are lazy and exploit the system. That's what the phrase was built to do. Now, this one is a little bit more abstract. The concept of globalists. Again, we'll go with Donald Trump. A globalist is a person who wants the globe to do well, not caring about our country so much. This one depends heavily on context. Sometimes it just means international cooperation, which, for whatever reason, is seen as bad by President Trump. But in certain circles, it's been used as a stand-in for Jewish elites controlling global systems. That's not a stretch. That's documented usage in extremist rhetoric. So again, what you hear is people focused on global interest. What it signals is suspicion of shadowy, often Jewish, international elite. Context matters here, but when it's used in certain patterns, the meaning is undeniable. Parental rights. This one is from Ron DeSantis. Parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing and education of their children. Now, that sounds great. Who's against that? But in practice, the phrase is often used to oppose specific things. LGBTQ inclusion in schools, discussions of gender identity, certain historical teachings about race. So what you hear is parents should have control. No one argues that. But what it signals is we should be able to restrict what schools teach about race and LGBTQ issues. Now, a big one you've heard about in the recent past, critical race theory. This one is from Glenn Youngkin. Critical race theory is being forced into our schools. This one got completely rebranded. CRT is a niche legal theory, but politically it became a catch-all for talking about systemic racism, teaching uncomfortable parts of history, acknowledging inequality. So what they say is something along the lines of stop a specific academic theory. But what it signals is stop teaching about racism. Protect our children. This is another Ron DeSantis greatest hit. We have to protect our children from this ideology. And this one is emotionally powerful because nobody wants to not protect children, but it's often used to frame, again, LGBTQ people as a threat. What you hear is keep kids safe. What it signals is LGBTQ people are dangerous to children. That's the implication being planted, clear as day. Oh, and then there's the deep state. How many times have we heard Donald Trump say, we're fighting the deep state? This one just simply reframes reality. Because now, any institution, whether it's courts, FBI, intelligence agencies, whatever, can be dismissed as part of a hidden conspiracy. What you hear is there's corruption behind the scenes. But what it signals is any opposition to me is therefore illegitimate. I'm just asking questions. Or, as the president likes to put it, many people are asking. This is a tactic. It introduces an idea without owning it. Hey, I'm not saying it's true, but now the idea is out there. So you hear something that sounds like curiosity, but what it actually is the introduction of a conspiracy that the speaker doesn't really want to take responsibility for. It's not about race. President Trump has said this on number of occasions. This has nothing to do with race. This one is just simply a shield because it shows up right after something that clearly has racial implications. And once it's said, anyone who points out race becomes the de facto problem. What you hear is, this is a neutral issue. But what it signals is, I want to shut down the discussion of race immediately. This is where it lands. It's not one phrase, it's a pattern. Now, people deny dog whistles, even their existence, let alone their common usage, for a few reasons. Sometimes it's genuine. They're hearing the surface meaning, and that's it. But other times, it's uncomfortable, because if you admit the second meaning exists, you have to rethink the person who's saying it. And that can be hard, especially today. And then there's identity. If your political team uses this language, you defend it, because now politics are identity. And it feels like you're defending yourself. Now, here's the part that messes with people the most, I think. You hear it, you recognize it, and then someone tells you it's not there over and over. And you start doubting yourself. Again, that's the effect. Whether intentional or not, it creates uncertainty, and uncertainty helps keep people quiet. Now, dog whistles don't always stay subtle. Over time, they get louder. What used to be implied starts to become explicit. And people just slowly adjust, gradually. The line moves. And suddenly, things that once felt shocking feel normal. We've talked about this before. Now, why all this matters? Because this shapes how people think. It does so quietly, usually without much debate, with very little, if any, accountability. But it moves the boundaries of what's acceptable, and it does it without ever saying the thing directly. So go back to that moment that I mentioned at the beginning, that pause, that feeling of, did they just say that? Now you know why it felt that way. Because you heard both meanings. And now you'll hear it again, and this time I'm hoping you won't second guess it. You'll recognize it. Because once you hear the signal, it's very hard to unhear it. All right, everybody. Thank you once again for taking the time to download and listen to this episode of Your Neighbor on the Left. I want to hear from you. What do you think about dog whistles? Do you think I'm full of baloney? Do you think these things really exist? Did I miss any? Are there others that you're familiar with that really get under your skin? Compliments, critiques, questions, whatever it is that you have, I would like to hear them. Go to the website, www.neighborontheleft.com, go to the contacts page, and either use one of the links for social media to send me a direct message there, or you can use the email address that's listed and shoot me an email with whatever it is that you want to say. There's also on the website a web player feature where you can stream or download any episode of the podcast since the very beginning, and a blog section where you can read companion posts that go with the topics that I talk about on the podcast, and they include my sources. That, I feel, is the most important part of the blog, is that it gives you, the listener, the ability to see where I'm getting my information from. All right, so I'll be back on Friday with an episode of Back Porch Files. So between now and then, stay engaged, stay kind, and have the kind of week you wish for others.